Hello, this is the first in a series of videos on reimagining imagination. So the whole Wild Imagination project is all about helping you to enhance, cultivate your imaginative life. And this series is going to be about helping you to think through and clarify what your assumptions are about imagination so that you can have better ideas rather than unhelpful ideas. So if that's interesting, stick around and I'll give you a bit of an overview of what's to come. Okay, so reimagining imagination. So it's kind of, the series is about what do we imagine of imagination, which totally matters if you want to enhance your imaginative life. I mean, why would you want to do that? I mean, where I'm coming from, what I'm saying is that an imaginative life is a psychologically healthy life. An imaginative life is one full of story and possibility and creativity. So that's the why. But how we do that will be shaped by the assumptions, the kind of frame that we have for what we're doing. And frankly, the common sense assumption about imagination isn't a very helpful one. It's basically a sort of pejorative even. It's like a fantasy that's not connected to the senses. It's a made up thing that's disconnected from everyday life. Maybe it's useful for being creative and coming up with good ideas, but you want to be careful. You don't want to be too imaginative. You want to be in touch with what's real, what's objective, and separate out your imaginative life from reality. Where we're going is much more interesting than that, because what we'll find out through the series is that imagination is woven into how we see the world, inhabit the world, interact with the world. It's part and parcel of our sense of self. That's the broad understanding of imagination that we're going to look at, as opposed to this narrow kind of sort of jam jar, inner psychological interiority, tinkering around with images in the mind, assumptions. So I'm going to break that down. I'm tracking basically the different ideas and ways to look at imagination that I shared in my Waking Dreams book. And you need different ways of coming in at imagination. So basically this series, the video series, will track broadly two different approaches. The first one will be a phenomenological approach. So we're just going to describe what imagination is as an experience and the different theories that help us to notice imaginative experience as opposed to the unhelpful ones. Because most of the common sense assumptions about imagination are not at all based on what it experientially is. So we're going to look at how imagination is embodied and connected to sense experience. We're going to look at how imagination is an immersive experience, how images are not inside us, but actually we are surrounded by the activity of images. We're going to look at how imagination is alive or animate, how imagination is inherently personified. Then we are going to, the second half of the video series, will look at different metaphors that people use to help them think about and notice imagery. So metaphors, like if you can't quite touch it, point to it, weigh it, you need to come up with a metaphor. It's like imagination is as if. And the main one that we'll look at, and the unhelpful one, is that imagination is as if a machine. So the mechanical imagination, which is at the root of so much work and application of imagery in therapy and related fields. The assumption that images are like, a machine that we can sort of shunt around. So we'll talk about that and why it's unhelpful, and then we'll get into ecological metaphors. Imagination is as if an ecosystem, and how that's a much more helpful and expansive metaphor for noticing and enhancing your imaginative life. And then, coming out of that ecological metaphor, we'll look at how imagination is as if fractal in structure. So fractals are a really amazing, fun bit of theory, which points to, they're called the pictures of nature, so they're very much aligned to an imaginative approach. So it points to the idea that there's patterns in nature that repeat, that are self-similar. And that allows us to make connections from, for example, the images in a dream that we have when we're asleep at night, and the activity of imagery that we find ourselves in normal everyday life. They're not disconnected, those two things. And then we'll finish off with what I call the transpersonal imagination as a kind of umbrella concept, which brings together all these other ideas around imagination and concepts like soul and soul making, to round things off. Okay, so Reimagining Imagination video series on the assumptions that you have about your imaginative life, how to look out for the unhelpful ones, and then open up to a broader, more expansive understanding that will help you actually move into and inhabit a fuller imaginative experience, which is healing and transformative and creative and joyful. Okay, so I'll leave it there for now, and I'll see you in the next video where we're going to talk about embodied imagination. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.